My name is Sophie, and I'm 32 years old. I've always had a passion for fashion, a love that was ignited by my mother, a renowned fashion designer. Growing up, I watched her transform fabric into art, and I dreamed of following in her footsteps. But life had other plans. When I was just 16, my mother passed away unexpectedly, leaving my father and me to navigate a world that felt a little darker without her light. My father, a struggling painter, did his best to support us, but the burden of loss weighed heavily on both of us. I made the difficult decision to forgo high school and dive straight into the workforce, determined to help my father and pursue my dream of becoming a designer. I started small, working in a local boutique, learning the ropes of the fashion industry while honing my skills. Years later, I met Mark, a kind-hearted tech entrepreneur who saw the world through a lens of optimism. We connected over our shared love for creativity and ambition. Mark was everything I needed: supportive, understanding, and patient. After 2 years of dating, we decided to tie the knot, excited to start our life together. However, I knew that marrying Mark meant also marrying into his family, particularly his mother, Linda. Linda was a traditional woman, set in her ways, and I had heard whispers of her disapproval regarding my lack of a formal education. I brushed it off, thinking that love would conquer all. Little did I know the storm was brewing, and it would soon erupt on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Growing up, my life was a tapestry woven with both joy and sorrow. My mother, a brilliant fashion designer, was my guiding star. She had a unique ability to see beauty in the mundane, transforming simple fabrics into stunning pieces that graced runways and magazines. I remember spending countless afternoons in her studio, surrounded by swatches of fabric and the hum of her sewing machine. She would often say, "Fashion is not just about clothes, it's about expressing who you are." Those words resonated deeply with me. But when I was 16, everything changed. My mother's sudden passing from a heart attack left a void that felt insurmountable. My father, a painter who had always struggled for recognition, was devastated. He had relied on my mother's success to support our family, and now, with her gone, he was lost. I watched him grapple with grief, his once vibrant spirit dimmed by the weight of our new reality. In the wake of my mother's death, I made a choice that would shape my future. I decided to leave school and enter the workforce. I wanted to support my father and honor my mother's legacy by pursuing my passion for fashion. I took a job at a local boutique where I learned the ins and outs of the industry. I spent my days folding clothes, assisting customers, and sketching designs in my notebook during quiet moments. It was a humble beginning, but it fueled my determination to succeed. As the years passed, I built a name for myself in the fashion world. I started creating my own designs, showcasing them at local fashion shows. My hard work paid off when I landed a contract with a small fashion label. I was finally on my way to achieving my dream. But the journey was not without its challenges. Then came Mark. We met at a charity event where I was showcasing my designs. He was captivated by my work and struck up a conversation that felt effortless. Mark was different from anyone I had ever met. He was kind, intelligent, and had a passion for technology that matched my love for fashion. We quickly fell in love, and I found solace in his unwavering support. He encouraged me to pursue my dreams and reminded me that my past did not define my future. After 2 years of dating, we decided to get married. I was thrilled, but a part of me felt anxious about meeting his family, especially his mother, Linda. I had heard stories about her traditional views and her expectations for her son's future wife. I knew she valued education and might look down on my lack of a high school diploma. Still, I hoped that love would bridge any gaps between us. As the wedding day approached, I tried to focus on the joy of marrying Mark. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Linda's disapproval loomed over me like a dark cloud. I wanted to make a good impression, but I also wanted to stay true to myself. Little did I know, the tension between us would soon come to a head. As the wedding day approached, I found myself increasingly anxious about my future with Mark's family, particularly his mother, Linda. I had heard stories from Mark about her traditional values and her high expectations for him. She was a woman who believed in the importance of education and status, and I worried that my background as a self-taught designer would not meet her standards. When Linda moved in with us after the passing of Mark's father, I tried to be welcoming. I wanted to create a harmonious home, but it quickly became apparent that our personalities clashed. Linda was a meticulous woman, and she had her own way of doing things. I often found her rearranging my carefully curated designs or critiquing my work without hesitation. "Sophie, you really should consider going back to school. A degree would give you more credibility," she would say, her tone dripping with condescension. At first, I brushed off her comments, reminding myself that I was proud of my journey. I had built my career from the ground up, and I didn't need a piece of paper to validate my talent. But as the weeks turned into months, her constant jabs began to wear me down. I felt like I was living under a microscope, and one evening, after a particularly long day at work, I returned home to find Linda in the kitchen, her arms crossed as she surveyed the mess. "Sophie, this place is a disaster. You really need to clean up after yourself. It's basic manners," she snapped, glaring at the dishes piled in the sink. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I'll take care of it, Linda. I've just had a long day," I replied, forcing a smile. But she wasn't done. "You know, I heard from Mark that you didn't even finish high school. How do you expect to be a good wife if you can't even manage a household?" Her words cut deep, and I felt my frustration bubbling to the surface. "Linda, I may not have a formal education, but I've built a career in fashion. I'm doing my best to support our family," I shot back, my voice rising. I could feel the tension in the room thickening, and I knew this was just the beginning of our conflict. As the wedding day drew closer, I tried to focus on the love Mark and I shared, but the thought of facing Linda at the ceremony filled me with dread. I wanted to make a good impression, but I also knew that I couldn't let her belittle me on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The night before the wedding, I lay awake, my mind racing. I thought about my mother and how proud she would have been to see me marry the love of my life. I wished she were here to guide me through this challenging time. I resolved to stand my ground and not let Linda's negativity overshadow my joy. Little did I know, the confrontation I had been dreading was just around the corner, and it would unfold in front of all our friends and family, turning our wedding day into a battleground. The day of the wedding arrived, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The venue was beautifully decorated with flowers cascading from the ceiling and soft music playing in the background. I felt like a princess in my wedding gown, and as I walked down the aisle, I could see Mark's eyes light up with love and admiration. In that moment, everything felt perfect. However, as I took my place beside him, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I glanced at Linda, who sat in the front row, her expression unreadable. I hoped that today would be a day of celebration, but deep down I feared that her disapproval would rear its ugly head. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with heartfelt vows and laughter. Mark and I exchanged rings, promising to support and love each other through thick and thin. As we turned to face our guests, I felt a wave of joy wash over me. But just as I was about to bask in the happiness of the moment, Linda stood up, grabbing the microphone from the officiant. The cheerful wedding music abruptly stopped, and a hush fell over the crowd. My heart raced as I watched her step forward, her eyes locked onto me with a fierce intensity. "As you can see, we are a family that can invite over 150 guests to a wedding," she began, her voice dripping with disdain. "And yet, this bride, a mere middle school graduate, is absolutely unacceptable." Gasps echoed through the crowd, and I felt my stomach drop. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "She's useless," Linda continued, her voice rising. "She can't even manage household chores properly, and all she does is voice her own opinions. Honestly, she eats so many sweets that she's gotten fat. An ugly duckling looks more decent than her." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and anger. The staff members rushed to intervene, but Linda waved them off, her tirade relentless. I glanced at Mark, who looked pale and shaken, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I knew I had to do something. Without thinking, I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. "Then I'll stop being your daughter-in-law," I shouted, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The room fell into a stunned silence, and I could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on me. Mark's eyes widened in shock, and I could see the conflict in his expression, but I pressed on, fueled by a mix of anger and determination. "You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone? You've pushed me to my breaking point, Linda. I won't stand for it any longer." The guests began to murmur among themselves, their expressions a mix of disbelief and sympathy. I could see some of them shaking their heads in disapproval of Linda's behavior. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "You've made this day about you, not about the love Mark and I share. This is supposed to be a celebration, not a platform for your insults." Linda's face turned crimson, and for a moment she looked taken aback, but then she regained her composure, her eyes narrowing. "You're just a middle school graduate pretending to be something you're not. You think you can just walk away from this family?" I felt a surge of confidence as I continued. "I may not have a formal education, but I've built a career in fashion. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I won't let you belittle my achievements. You've insulted me and my family without knowing anything about our struggles." I gestured to the staff, who were still standing by, unsure of what to do. "Bring me the envelope," I called out, my voice steady. A staff member rushed forward, holding an envelope that I had prepared earlier. I opened it in front of everyone, revealing a document that showed a loan taken out in my name for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The crowd gasped again, and I could see Linda's face pale as she realized what was happening. "I never took out this loan," I declared, my voice firm. When I called the loan company, they confirmed that Linda had impersonated me to borrow this money. "That's fraud." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, and I could see some guests shaking their heads in disbelief. Linda's expression shifted from anger to panic as she realized she had lost control of the situation. "You're lying! You're just a middle school graduate trying to ruin my reputation," she shouted. But her voice lacked conviction. Mark stepped forward, his voice low and steady. "That's enough, Mother. You've already done enough damage. You humiliated my wife and hurt her deeply, and now we find out you committed fraud against her. This wedding is over." The crowd erupted in whispers, and I could feel the support of our friends and family surrounding me. Mark took my hand, and together we turned to leave the venue, leaving behind a stunned and silent crowd. As we walked out, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had stood up for myself, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my dignity. The next day, the fallout from the wedding was everywhere. News outlets picked up the story of the dramatic confrontation, and social media buzzed with opinions. I had never imagined that my personal life would become such a public spectacle, but there I was, the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. As I sat in our living room, scrolling through the endless comments and messages, I felt a mix of emotions. Some people supported me, praising my courage to stand up to Linda, while others criticized me for airing our family's dirty laundry in public. Mark sat beside me, his expression a mix of concern and pride. "You did what you had to do, Sophie," he said softly, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "I'm proud of you." Despite his support, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Linda had always been a formidable presence in Mark's life, and I knew that this confrontation would have lasting repercussions. I worried about how it would affect our relationship with his family, especially since Mark was an only child. A few days later, Linda reached out to me. I was surprised when I saw her name pop up on my phone. "Sophie, can we talk?" the message read. My heart raced as I considered whether to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to cut ties completely, but another part of me felt a flicker of compassion. After all, she was still Mark's mother. I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe, my stomach churning with anxiety. When I arrived, I found Linda sitting at a table, her expression a mix of anger and regret. "I'm sorry for what happened at the wedding," she began, her voice shaky. "I let my emotions get the best of me." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Linda, you can't just insult me and then expect everything to be okay. You hurt me deeply and you embarrassed me in front of everyone," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "I know," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "I've always been so focused on appearances and what I thought was best for Mark. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I was wrong to judge you based on your education. I see that now." Her vulnerability surprised me. I had expected her to be defensive, but instead she seemed genuinely remorseful. "I've spent so much time trying to control everything, and I lost sight of what really matters. Family," she continued. "I want to make amends, Sophie. I want to understand you better." I felt a flicker of hope. "I appreciate your honesty, Linda, but it's going to take time for me to trust you again. I need to know that you respect me for who I am, not just for my education or my career," I said. "I promise to do better," she replied, her voice earnest. "I want to support you and Mark, not tear you apart. I've been so caught up in my own expectations that I forgot to see the amazing person you are." As we talked, I began to see a different side of Linda. She shared stories about her own struggles and insecurities, and I realized that she too had faced challenges in her life. We may have come from different worlds, but we both wanted the same thing: a loving family. After our conversation, I felt a sense of relief. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to give Linda a chance to change. I knew that rebuilding our relationship would take time, but I was hopeful that we could find common ground. In the weeks that followed, Mark and I focused on our marriage. We decided to take a step back from the chaos and concentrate on what truly mattered: our love for each other. I poured my energy into my fashion career, launching a new collection inspired by my journey. The collection was a tribute to resilience, showcasing designs that celebrated individuality and strength. As my work gained recognition, I found myself in the spotlight for all the right reasons. I was invited to showcase my collection at a major fashion event, and the excitement was palpable. Mark stood by my side, cheering me on as I took the stage to present my designs. In that moment, I felt empowered, knowing that I had overcome so much to get there. Meanwhile, Linda began to reach out more, attending my shows and offering her support. It was a slow process, but I could see her efforts to change. She even started taking an interest in my designs, asking questions and offering feedback. I appreciated her willingness to learn, and it felt good to have her in my corner. Months later, as I stood backstage at the fashion event, I reflected on how far I had come. I had faced my fears, stood up for myself, and found my voice. I had also learned the importance of forgiveness and understanding. Life was a journey, and while there would always be challenges, I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I stepped onto the runway, I felt a surge of confidence. I was no longer just Sophie, the middle school graduate. I was Sophie, a designer, a wife, and a woman who had fought for her dreams. And as I looked out into the audience, I saw Mark's proud smile and Linda's supportive nod. I knew that together, we could create a beautiful future. As the months rolled on, life began to settle into a new rhythm. My fashion career was flourishing, and I was finally gaining the recognition I had always dreamed of. The collection I had launched was well received, and I was invited to showcase my designs at various events across the country. Each time I stepped onto the runway, I felt a rush of adrenaline and pride, knowing that I was not just representing myself, but also honoring my mother's legacy. Mark and I had grown closer through the challenges we faced. We learned to communicate better, to support each other through thick and thin. He was my rock, always encouraging me to pursue my dreams while reminding me to take care of myself. We spent our weekends exploring new places, trying out new restaurants, and simply enjoying each other's company. It felt like we were building a life together, one filled with love and laughter. Linda, too, had made significant strides in our relationship. She began attending my fashion shows regularly, and I could see her genuine interest in my work. One day, after a particularly successful show, she approached me with a proposal. "Sophie, I've been thinking," she said, her tone serious yet hopeful. "What if we collaborated on a line together? I have some ideas that could blend your modern designs with my traditional styles." I was taken aback. The thought of working with Linda, the woman who had once belittled me, was both exciting and daunting. "Are you sure, Linda? I mean, it's a big step," I replied, trying to gauge her sincerity. "Absolutely," she said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I want to support you in every way I can. I've seen how hard you've worked, and I believe we could create something beautiful together." After some consideration, I agreed. We began brainstorming ideas, merging our styles and visions. It was a learning experience for both of us, and I found myself appreciating Linda's insights and expertise. She had a wealth of knowledge about fabrics and techniques that I had never considered, and I was eager to learn from her. As we worked together, our bond deepened. We shared stories about our lives, our struggles, and our dreams. I learned about Linda's own journey in the fashion industry, her early days of trying to make a name for herself, and the sacrifices she had made for her family. It was refreshing to see her vulnerability, and I began to understand her better. One evening, as we were finalizing designs for our new collection, Linda looked at me with a serious expression. "Sophie, I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've come so far, and you've done it all on your own terms. I admire your strength," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized how much our relationship had transformed. "Thank you, Linda. That means a lot to me. I've learned so much from you, too." "I never expected to find a mentor in my mother-in-law," I replied, smiling through my tears. As we launched our collaborative line, it was met with enthusiasm from both our supporters. The collection was a beautiful blend of modern and traditional styles, showcasing the best of both worlds. We received praise from critics and customers alike, and I felt a sense of accomplishment that I had never experienced before. With each passing day, I felt more confident in my abilities as a designer and as a daughter-in-law. I had learned to embrace my past while looking forward to the future. I was no longer just the girl who had dropped out of school. I was a successful designer, a loving wife, and a woman who had fought for her place in the world. As the year came to a close, Mark and I decided to host a small gathering to celebrate our achievements and the new beginnings we had created. We invited close friends and family, including Linda. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, filled with laughter and joy. During the gathering, I took a moment to reflect on how far we had come. I stood up to give a toast, my heart swelling with gratitude. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This year has been a journey of growth and transformation for me, and I couldn't have done it without the support of my amazing husband and my wonderful mother-in-law," I said, raising my glass. Linda smiled, her eyes glistening with pride. "And I want to thank you, Sophie, for allowing me to be a part of your journey. You've taught me so much about resilience and creativity. I'm excited to see where this path takes us," she replied, her voice filled with emotion. As we clinked our glasses together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had faced my fears, stood up for myself, and built a life filled with love and support. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I was ready to embrace whatever came next. With Mark by my side and a newfound bond with Linda, I knew that we could face any challenge together. Life was a beautiful tapestry, and I was excited to see how our story would continue to unfold. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey today. If you enjoyed this story of resilience, love, and unexpected transformations, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. If you want to see more inspiring stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Revenge Bound and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our community as we explore tales of strength, courage, and the power of standing up for yourself. Remember, your story matters, and together we can inspire others. Until next time, keep believing in yourself and your dreams.